Alcatraz, it could be reopened soon. We could see Alcatraz come back in the United States as a fully functioning prison. And the facility on a small island in San Francisco, it's been closed since 1963. It actually wasn't even open that long, by the way. Since then, it's been turned into a tourist destination. President Donald Trump says he wants the facility reopened, and he wants the most dangerous criminals in the country to go there. It'd be our own little Arkham Asylum. And while some have suggested the prison is actually not feasible or sustainable because it doesn't have a lot of space and it actually costs an insane amount of money to keep up, Trump says it's a symbol, and he wants that as a symbol of law and order. This is what he had to say in an official post on it. He said this, quote, "Rebuild and open Alcatraz. For too long, America has been plagued by vicious, violent, and repeat criminal offenders, the dregs of society, who will never contribute anything other than misery and suffering." He said that when we were a more serious nation in times past, we did not hesitate to lock up the most dangerous criminals and keep them far away from anyone they could harm. And he said that's the way it's supposed to be. No longer will we tolerate these serial offenders who spread filth, bloodshed, and mayhem on our streets. That is why today I'm directing the Bureau of Prisons, together with the Department of Justice, FBI, and Homeland Security, to reopen a substantially enlarged, they want to make it bigger, and rebuilt Alcatraz, he says, to house America's most ruthless and violent offenders. And he adds this. He said, "We will no longer be held hostage to criminals, thugs, and judges that are afraid to do their job and allow us to remove criminals who came into our country illegally. The reopening of Alcatraz will serve as a symbol of law, order, and justice." Now look, as tends to be the case, not everybody agrees with Trump. And already Trump's proposal is facing some challenges. Nancy Pelosi, she's a representative from San Francisco, that's her district. She wrote in response that saying that, quote, "Alcatraz closed as a federal penitentiary more than 60 years ago. It is now a very popular national park and major tourist attraction," suggesting like it's part of the tourist industry. She said the president's proposal is not a serious one. Now, she posted that, in a response to another post, and that one noted a lot of facts about Alcatraz, like why it was closed in the first place. And, contrary to what some might expect, thinking maybe, oh, it was a human rights issue or something, it wasn't. It was actually very practical. Alcatraz was closed mainly because it costs so much money to keep up. Keep it supplied each day. They have to bring in fresh water. They have to bring in food. It doesn't have a lot on the island itself. It was only operational for about 29 years as a prison before it was closed in 1963. It was said to be around 3 times more expensive to operate than any other federal prison at that time. And adjusted for inflation, this would be a very expensive facility. It's like paying for 3 prisons just to keep one going effectively. And part of that had to do with the challenge of keeping, again, supplies and staff. You have to bring people there by boat every day, but water is another big one. It needed about 1 million gallons of water every single week. And understand what it takes to ship 1 million gallons of water to a little island every single week. It was a lot of work. It was also not set up to hold that many prisoners. Again, Trump saying he wants to substantially expand it. Maybe that'll reduce the operational costs as well. It was originally only designed to hold a maximum of 336 prisoners. We don't know what he has in store for it, if he's actually going to do it, but he wants to make that bigger. We'll see, again, if they remodel and expand it. They would have to retrofit it. They'd have to do a lot of work on it. They'd probably have to modernize it a bit because you need like electrical, I think they have electrical infrastructure. They'd have to expand that too. They would need to do a lot of work on it. And of course, the question would be, is that financially viable? Do you really want to do it? We will see. But on Trump's side of reopening Alcatraz, again, he's saying it's more about being a symbol. It's sending a message, right? And he noted this in his post where he said it's a symbol of law, order, and justice. This is actually another part of law enforcement. Some people, when they look at law enforcement in prison and everything else, aside from meting out justice, law stands in place also as a warning. It's saying, don't do this or this could happen to you. If you don't want to lose your freedom or your life or whatever else, don't cross this line. And of course, having Alcatraz as being a very scary potential punishment for bad decisions, it does work as a symbol on that front. And Trump also discussed this during a recent press conference. Watch this.
It represents something very strong, very powerful in terms of law and order. Our country needs law and order. Alcatraz is, I would say, the ultimate, right? It housed the most violent criminals in the world, and nobody ever escaped. One person almost got there, but they, as you know the story, they found his clothing rather badly ripped up, and it was a lot of shark bites, a lot of problems. Nobody's ever escaped from Alcatraz, and just represented something strong having to do with law and order. We need law and order in this country, and so we're going to look at it. Some of the people up here are going to be working very hard on that, and we had a little conversation. I think it's going to be very interesting. We'll see if we can bring it back in large form, add a lot. But I think
now, in addition to, the, let's say, symbolic nature of Alcatraz, there's also some practical elements to it. One of the big ones being you do have gangs that operate from prison. They get cell phones, they have ways to communicate outside, and, it's the modern age. I know Epic Times, we even have some readers in prison. They send us letters sometimes. They're not all horrible people forever, but one of the problems you have is that because of smuggling, because people bring drones in, they drop things under the prison yard. They've even trained pigeons to do it. You get, of course, prisoners getting things they should not be obtaining, and they use those things sometimes to coordinate operations outside the prison. You develop prison gangs, they become a problem. Requiring those individuals, if they want to deliver things, to make a trip to Alcatraz somehow, maybe, I don't know, like a little yellow blow-up raft, which is hard because of the waters, it's a lot less viable. And so there are some practical points to it if you put gang leadership there or something like that. But look, on a related point, Trump is also talking about sending people outside the country. El Salvador is probably the biggest threat on why you should not illegally enter the country and join a gang, for example. And the Trump administration is also now looking to expand its options for deportations, not technically for criminals, for other things as well. Now look, already, as I mentioned, the United States has an agreement with El Salvador for deportations, including with an ever-expanding prison system. It's actually very cheap relatively to America, very cheap to maintain, being used to mainly hold gang members with MS-13, Tren de Aragua, and maybe others soon. Maybe even American citizens, he's saying. But now there are actually talks of having another destination. If you enter the country illegally, you could also now have a one-way ticket to Africa, and in particular to Rwanda. Now, it seems this is not necessarily just for criminals either. Town Hall said this. They said Rwanda has confirmed it's in the early stage talks with the United States about taking in illegal immigrants deported by the Trump administration. Now, if that sounds crazy, it's actually important to note other countries already have agreements like that with Rwanda. It notes, of course, basically, Rwanda has agreements with several countries, in particular for people standing in line to get asylum or to migrate to Europe. It's kind of one of the in-between countries. In particular, it actually already has a joint partnership with the United Nations Refugee Agency, meaning it's working with the UN on this stuff. It has a deal with Denmark to cooperate on asylum and migration. It allegedly, and that's allegedly with a capital A because it's kind of confirmed, but you can't really confirm it, allegedly has a partnership with Israel to receive deported Africans. It also has agreements with actually the UK. Going back to 2022, the UK, United Kingdom, they actually even built facilities there for these operations where they were going to work with them for deportations and stuff. That actually got overturned already, though, by the British Supreme Court, but the facilities are there. And there's also reporting out of the United Kingdom that the infrastructure built by the UK, well, could soon be used by the Trump administration and this whole agreement being negotiated. Mirror UK said this. They say migrants deported by Donald Trump may be housed in Rwanda in motels paid for by British taxpayers, reports claim. It notes this. It says the Rwandan government will discuss housing people removed from America in facilities that were built by the UK. It is understood today. And they say when asked if the British facilities will be used for an American scheme, a Rwandan government official reportedly said, quote, "Those are details that will be discussed at an appropriate time." But look, they have the infrastructure. They're going to use it for something, right? Now, note, like under the new agreement, Rwanda would join the list of third countries where Mr. Trump's administration sends deportees, similar to El Salvador. Third country options, again, that might include prisons. It might also just include drop-off points for illegal immigrants. Hey, you know, we're not going to bus you wherever you want to go unless you leave voluntarily. I'll get into that in a minute. If you leave voluntarily, you can go where you want to go. They'll even buy your flight for you. But if you don't leave voluntarily, we might just drop you off somewhere. Hey, is this close enough, guys? Rwanda sounds good. It might be like that. They're talking to a few different countries like that. Now, it adds the U.S. president has been criticized for sending migrants to, quote, hell-on-earth prisons in El Salvador, including Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who last week, Mr. Trump said he can bring back the man, but won't. Abrego Garcia is the accused MS-13 member who has MS-13 symbols tattooed on his hands, but which media say was photoshopped because actually the prison photo shows MS-13 when it's actually just symbols. That's the technicality with it. But it notes this, Rwanda has already received some migrants from the U.S., including at least one Iraqi national, according to a diplomatic cable TV station. But Britain's use of the accommodation has been blasted and was scrapped by Keir Starmer days after Labour, one of the governments there, won the general election in July. It says the Tories had introduced it, however. Just 4 migrants were sent to the African state, all voluntarily. And remember, that's also one of the ideas as well. Some countries will not accept deportees. For example, Venezuela used to not accept them. They've changed now. And so Trump was negotiating third country options. So, hey, you illegally immigrated here from this country. They won't take you back. We'll drop you off at the next best place. How about Rwanda or El Salvador, buddy? I'm sure you can hitchhike back, right? That's the idea. Part of that might also include prison operations, though, where, again, they might expand this. Right now it's just for gang members. Trump is actually expanding that even for like bad criminals, or, you know, they're even talking about making illegal immigration maybe more of a serious crime. So we'll see how that works. And look, it might not even be just Rwanda they're talking about. Border Czar Tom Homan, he actually commented on Monday that the administration is undergoing talks with these, you know, third countries, they call them, meaning your first option is the country you came from. Well, first option is probably the United States. That's not going to happen. Second option, where you came from. Third country, well, the next best thing. And this is him talking about it. Watch this.
But Alcatraz reopened. President talking about
Well, we need detention beds, and you know, we do contracts a lot of states, a lot of local municipalities. So that's I think it's certainly an option, especially for the significant public safety threats, national security threats. I mean, should be on the table. There's talks underway with other countries that are willing to take illegal aliens that their own countries won't take them. So we'll find a third safe country to take them. So yeah, there's talks underway.
Now look, actually, even aside from like logistics of, hey, we need to send you to Africa, but we're not going to bus you directly to wherever you came from. How about Rwanda? There are other elements with these third country options. Part of that is just the deportation process. They're even using, for example, Guantanamo Bay to expand some of the deportations. But some people have criticized the use of third countries as being kind of a side path to, you know, putting on hold habeas corpus, which is, you know, due process effectively. This is one of the big criticisms from the left, especially noting that some of the deportees are not getting like what they consider to be proper due process. Trump's use of other countries as kind of like the jump points for deportations, what does that mean? It means they're outside the jurisdiction of the United States. So if an individual gets rounded up, shipped off to Rwanda or El Salvador or even Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, what does that mean? It means they don't really have the ability to go to a local judge and file a case saying, hey, review my case, bring me back. U.S. courts don't have jurisdictions in those countries. And so to an extent, some have criticized it as this, that it does suspend some elements of habeas corpus. Again, outside U.S. jurisdiction, in other words. But look, folks, other news, some breaking stuff actually. India has carried out a series of strikes against alleged terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan. And this is looking pretty serious. This comes on the heels of a Pakistan terrorist attack in India. Again, shooting Hindus and such. There are concerns the conflict risk expanding into another war. India, Pakistan, they've had several wars actually. And this is also concerning because, well, both countries are nuclear armed. These are nuclear powers. Reuters said this. It says India hit Pakistan and Pakistani Kashmir with missiles on Wednesday, and Pakistan said it had shot down 5 Indian aircraft and vowed to retaliate in the worst fighting in more than 2 decades between the nuclear-armed neighbors. It said India said it struck 9 terrorist infrastructure sites, some of them linked to an attack by Islamist militants on Hindu tourists that killed 26 people in Indian Kashmir last month. Now, on Kashmir, they say Pakistan Kashmir, Indian Kashmir. There's disputed territory. Both countries have some territory there. It adds this, though, that Pakistan said at least 26 people had been killed on Wednesday and that India had ignited an inferno in the region. And it's Islamabad, again, Pakistan, pledged to respond at a time, place, and manner of its choosing to avenge the loss of innocent Pakistani lives and blatant violation of its sovereignty, they say. Now, on that front, the situation is still developing. Pakistan's prime minister said the strikes are an act of war. He also declared they have the right to carry out a robust response to the strikes. This is again a developing story. It also comes on the heels of actions from India to shut down one of the major water supplies into Pakistan. They control a dam. They can shut off the water. That's one of the major supplies of water to Pakistan, including to their farmers. So it's not a pretty picture right now. The big question right now is going to be whether they expand this. That is the real question hanging over this. Now, on that front, there are some other key elements with this story. One of them is historically, Pakistan has become a hotbed for terrorists. Remember, previously, when Pakistan was, of course, housing Osama bin Laden, for example, the United States actually went in, killed Osama bin Laden. You ever see the movie Zero Dark 30? Killed Osama bin Laden, captured him first, then killed him. Killed him, took his body, then dumped it into the ocean. That was, of course, in Pakistan. And keep in mind, that was on a Pakistan military installation. And there were concerns that Pakistan was actually, working to hide bin Laden. The other big thing is during the war in Afghanistan, when the United States was fighting the Taliban, a lot of them were actually going across the border into Pakistan, and that made it so the United States couldn't really go after them fully. They would fight them, they'd retreat across the border. We could not violate international laws and start a war on the grounds of Pakistan, except to kill bin Laden. And so that made it very hard. Part of that ties into tribal regions. The maps are drawn in a certain way. Thank you, British Empire. The maps are drawn in a certain way that are outside the way that the tribal maps were drawn. And so the Taliban, a lot of them are part of one particular tribe that operates between, of course, Afghanistan and Pakistan, but it's other issues as well. The other big issue, of course, is Pakistan has been accused of collaborating with terrorist organizations even outside of the Taliban, even outside of Osama bin Laden. This tied, of course, into the Mumbai terrorist attacks going a ways back, when you had terrorist attacks, carry out a horrific run-and-gun terror attack in India. At the time as well, India accused the Pakistani government of being kind of hand in glove with the terrorists. It's a very complicated situation. The other key thing I will add to this, though, is that the Chinese Communist Party has heavy involvement in a lot of the countries surrounding India. And it does use these countries as tools to kind of keep India in check. Why is that? Well, what are the two, rising power third countries for global manufacturing? Well, it's China and it's India. The CCP recognizes India as one of its main competitors, and especially right now, when a lot of manufacturing is leaving China, a lot of people are saying that a lot of that manufacturing could go to India. This is a big threat to the CCP. They would very much want a war between India and Pakistan. The CCP actually uses Sri Lanka, they use Pakistan, they use some of the surrounding regions as ways to launch kind of proxy battles to keep India distracted. And India does get pulled into territory wars with these countries, including, Sri Lanka. They've actually had to invade it a few times. So this is kind of the bigger picture with that. Also, the CCP has a Belt and Road Initiative going into Balochistan. It's a contested tribal region in Pakistan, and they want the Pakistani government to fight the terrorists. The Pakistani government will not do that because they also do not want to kind of poke the hornet's nest of terrorist organizations. It's a very complicated situation, but without a doubt, you have a lot of terrorist groups in Pakistan. The government there, at the very least, does not do a lot to put them down. At most, you could say they do work with them to an extent. It's a very complicated situation. But folks, on to another topic, because we'll have to see how that develops. Back to the issue of deportations. The Trump administration right now is rolling out a new program. They are offering free flights anywhere you want to go, just as long as it ain't here. You don't got to go home, but you can't stay here. Free flights and a $1,000 payment for anybody who wants to self-deport. I'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. The Trump administration is rolling out a brand new program for illegal immigrants, and they're offering them a one-time free flight to anywhere you want to go and $1,000 if they self-deport. And all they got to do is download that CBP One app, now known as the CBP Home app, and say, I want to go somewhere. Again, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay in the United States. That's the message being sent. This is the official announcement from the Department of Homeland Security. This is what they're saying. DHS, they say today, the Department of Homeland Security announced a historic opportunity, not a requirement, but a great opportunity that you can get right now for illegal aliens to receive both financial and travel assistance to facilitate travel back to their home country through the CBP Home app. Remember, the Trump administration took the Biden-era CBP One app where you could, effectively download it and schedule your illegal entry in the United States. It was a facilitated process. They've renamed that the Home app, and, it's to go home, right? They say any illegal alien who uses the CBP Home app to self-deport will also receive a stipend of $1,000 paid after their return to their home country has been confirmed through the app. So confirmed, here's your money, buddy. It says self-deportation is a dignified way to leave the U.S. dignified, not being sent to Rwanda or El Salvador or who knows where else. And it says it will allow illegal aliens to avoid being encountered by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. They say even with the cost of the stipend, it is projected that the CBP Home app will decrease the cost of a deportation by around 70%, because for the American taxpayer, it costs a lot of money to deport people. Using commercial flights, which is what this would do, would be a lot cheaper than using military flights to do it, and also having to go have agents round people up and so on. They say this, quote, currently the average cost to arrest, detain, and remove an illegal alien is $17,121. Multiply that by 20 million, as the Trump administration is saying it's going to cost, and you might see why it's not financially viable, and it might be cheaper to just buy them a plane ticket and give them $1,000. They say the first use of travel assistance has already proven successful. An illegal alien, one person, an illegal alien the Biden administration allowed into our country recently utilized the program to receive a ticket for a flight from Chicago to Honduras. The one guy, but good for him, the one guy. And they say this, additional tickets have already been booked for this week and the following week. We don't know how many they are, but we might get some answers on it. It says this, Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem said, quote, if you are here illegally, self-deportation is the best, safest, and most cost-efficient way to leave the United States to avoid arrest. This big point I'll get into in a minute. They say DHS is now offering illegal aliens financial travel assistance and a stipend to return to their home country through the CBP Home app. This is the safest option for our law enforcement, aliens, and is a 70% savings for U.S. taxpayers, meaning good for law enforcement, good for illegal aliens, and good for taxpayers, good for everyone, right? They say download the CBP Home app today and self-deport. Folks, I know what you're thinking. This is only for illegal immigrants, not for your travel destinations. You can't go there and say, I don't speak English, please give me $1,000 and an airplane ticket. You'll probably get yourself in trouble. I'd recommend not trying it. But they say this, illegal aliens submitting their intent to voluntarily self-deport in CBP Home will also be deprioritized for detention and removal ahead of their departure, meaning you will not be held in a detention facility as long as they say they demonstrate they are making meaningful strides in completing that departure. Participation in the CBP Home self-deportation may help preserve the option for an illegal alien to re-enter the United States legally in the future. That's going to be a big issue also, I'll get into it. And they say qualifying aliens need to submit their intent to depart via the CBP Home app. Download it today. Now look, this follows a series of actions that bring some pretty serious consequences for people who do not do this. Right now, if someone is in the country illegally, if they've overstayed their visa, and the technical language the administration is using now is alien, meaning not even illegal alien, meaning that includes not just people who illegally cross the border, it also includes people who came over through kind of the gray area policies where, you know, it was a gray area. It was facilitated entry to the United States, and they were giving them temporary protection status, other things like that put them in a funny place. Even a lot of public officials didn't fully understand what the heck they were doing because there wasn't a lot of transparency. The use of language suggests all of those people are now up for deportation. It's being challenged. I know, we'll get into that as well. But the language they're using right now says all of those people are now supposed to self-deport. If they don't, there are really serious consequences. Basically, what the administration did is it made it so all aliens in the United States are now required to register. That does not necessarily mean they're going to absolutely be deported or be up for it. They have to register. They got to download the CBP Home app. They're using that as the main source for this. Register, and then it will be determined if you're up for deportation. If there's any illegality in your status, then you will be deported. Even if you register, that's part of the process now. This is the other side to it, though. If they fail to register, if they don't download the CBP Home app and get that free airplane ticket and $1,000, if they fail to do it, they will also be subject to civil penalties. It will become a crime. That includes fines, actually really serious fines, and maybe even imprisonment. They're now putting people in prison for it's usually like a few months. Some are facing up to like 20 years, though, for repeat illegal entry. That's especially for like criminal aliens. Some of them could go to jail for a long time. It also carries a daily fine. Every single day you're here illegally, it's now a crime. Every single day, that's also a fine. And that can add up to about $1 million for some people. It's even applied retroactively going back 4 years. Up to $1 million fine if you've been here for like 4 years and you haven't left, or if you plan on staying and the money's going to add up. So there's a huge consequence now for not doing this. Not only that, but anybody who fails to self-deport will also be forbidden from the United States. They will not be able to come back for up to 20 years. And that's a big deal. If people have been here, they've built lives here, they have families here, and there are a lot of them like that, they have the option now, self-deport, and they want to have a streamlined process back into the United States. They're having green card programs, and if they do build back the factories and so on, they're probably going to be looking to hire a lot of people. They want to have a very robust green card system, meaning there will be a very easy path back for a lot of people, but that is only if they self-deport right now. If they do not, they could be barred from the United States for up to 20 years. That's a long time. It could also be for life, depending on the person. You may never be able to come back to the United States. The consequences of failing to deport are really serious now. And if that sounds crazy, a lot of countries have policies like that, just not the United States. I know, for example, with Costa Rica, again, my family had a house there. We used to go there to surf. I do homeschool a few months a year. If you overstay your visa there, they have programs like that as well. Overstaying your visa is a serious crime, and they really enforce it. A lot of countries are like that, just not the United States until now. And look, of course, that said, there are also definitely a lot of holdouts. A lot of people are saying, are you serious this time? Are you really going to deport me? Are you really going to fine me? Because, we have immigration laws that have just effectively not been enforced for a long time. The other argument is it's become such a major issue that some argue under the normal legal systems, it is relatively impossible to ever resolve. The Trump administration is saying on a low-end estimation, there's 20 million people. You also have judges blocking the deportations, judges blocking the orders, judges blocking this and that. Some people are, maybe looking to hold out. They're saying, hey, midterm elections are like a year and a half away now. If Trump does lose control of Congress, if Republicans lose control of Congress, it's possible a lot of this could get overturned. Some people are wanting to wait it out. It's dangerous for them to do it. We will see. And there's also the clash of local sanctuary city laws against federal laws. Some cities, for example, are saying we're just not going to enforce this stuff. Police are forbidden from working with law enforcement, federal law enforcement on this. And so for a lot of people who are here illegally, there are a lot of mixed messages being sent. And, on the Trump side, they're even looking into some of that as being possible crimes. The Trump administration is showing signs right now and actually making announcements that things are about to escalate, possibly even against those officials doing this. It's possible something big is happening right now. They're hinting at it. They're not giving clear answers on it. We're seeing some stuff on the periphery. Right now, folks, this could see federal action not just against illegal immigrants. The talk now is federal action against elected officials, against judges, and against basically anybody who tries to prevent the deportations or even tells illegal immigrants, don't listen to the government. It could get serious pretty soon. American military news, this is what they're saying. They say the Trump administration announced it would attempt to shame state, local authorities that are not cooperating with mass deportation efforts, a campaign it described as still in the beginning stages, even as the White House celebrates its ceremonial 100th day in office. In other words, they're currently carrying out some arrests. They are threatening arrests. The current campaign is, we're going to call you mean names. But you better stop doing it or we're going to call you mean names. It's a shaming process right now. I would actually argue, though, some of the media representation of this is just being a shaming process. It could be short-sighted, and I'll explain why. What the Trump administration is doing right now is they're creating lists of all the officials, all the judges, all the organizations, NGOs, everything else that are engaged in interfering with the deportations. And on one side, you could say that's creating a list to shame them. Yeah, that is the narrative. On the other side, they're promising legal action against people who do those exact things. So I would personally say this is not a shaming list. They're building a list of officials who could potentially be criminally charged. Will they do that? I don't know. But they have been saying they're going to do it. They have been saying it. Back to the report, though, here's what it says. It says, under a new executive order being signed Monday, President Donald Trump is ordering Attorney General Pam Bondi and Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem to publish a list of state and local governments that they see as obstructing federal immigration enforcement. Key word there, obstructing, because what is the law? Obstruction is a federal crime in this regard. And so while you could say that's a list of shame, it's a list designating officials as having violated a law being done through the Justice Department and the Department of Homeland Security. That's why it's serious. Now, I know it's earlier this month, Kristi Noem said 20 to 21 million people need to go home, referring, of course, to the low-end estimation of confirmed illegal immigrants. Around 10 million illegally entered under the Biden administration, around 10 million to 11 million prior to the Biden administration. It says, but deportations have proven harder to facilitate due to the legal challenges and scant resources, like the fact that it costs more than $17,000 to deport every single person. Now, notes that Tom Homan, border czar, he put the total number of deportations at around 139,000. And if you understand 100 days, 139,000 deportations, Trump has maybe 4 years, they're not going to get everybody at the current rate. It says this is when he was asked by a reporter during Monday's White House briefing, at least not under the current programs. They might expand them. And notes he characterized the deportation pace as good, but lamented media coverage claiming Biden deported at a faster clip. The technicality with Biden deporting more illegal immigrants than Trump and Obama deporting more illegal immigrants than Trump is basically this. They were facilitating mass entry to the United States under the Biden administration, but they were actually deporting a lot of people. They were. The technicality was there were two different elements at the border. One was actual border security, and a lot of Democrats have pointed out that Biden actually did have border security. They did deport a lot of people, more than Trump. That is true. The other side, though, is they had a very wide open door facilitating mass entry. And through those, legal gray areas, they were facilitating this. And again, they let in, whether through that or through other things, around 10 million people. That's a lot of people. And, again, that's also part of the problem the Trump administration has right now. How do you deal with a problem that's been created that is so large? How do you deal with 20 million people who are being let in through a lot of gray area programs? The argument from the Democrats is, well, you need to have a process. You have a legal process for this. Again, due process, that's why it's there. The other side is saying you violated due process through the facilitation of mass illegal immigration. And if you basically threw out due process to create a crisis and then want those walls back in place to prevent us from resolving the crisis you created by saying, hey, we didn't follow these issues, but now you have to, how does that work? So again, these are the two kind of worldviews with this. Now, like on this front, creating a list of public officials who are blocking or encouraging people to not self-deport or whatever else. This is also part of an overall action right now against sanctuary city laws, one of the big focuses of the Trump administration. But this also comes on the heels of two different incidents where judges were arrested, something you don't really see that. One of the judges is being accused of trying to block the deportation of an illegal immigrant from her courtroom. Actually took the illegal immigrant, brought the individual through a back door so that federal authorities could not grab them and take them out. Another case involved a judge and his wife who were both arrested, and they were allegedly housing a member of the Tren de Aragua gang. There were other allegations on that front, including that the judge helped destroy evidence on the individual's phone, which has now been recovered, including of decapitated victims. It's not clear whether the individual did that or if he just liked having photos like that. But that was also alongside evidence being presented. The individual was sending those images to other people who were then warning him, saying, hey, you shouldn't be posting that. Again, it's not clear. The individual is an accused gang member of Tren de Aragua, and there's a judge and his wife being accused right now of preventing that individual from being deported by housing him. And so you do see public officials now being targeted. Border Czar Tom Homan recently gave a pretty ominous statement on that front as well. And that statement has a lot of people now wondering, is the Trump administration planning something similar? Are they planning the arrest of other officials? Let me show you what he had to say. This is during a press gaggle last week. Watch this.
So the president signed an executive order just this week threatening to defund sanctuary cities for their policies. Why not just arrest the leaders who are harboring and shielding illegal aliens, actually terrorists, from deportation?
Wait to see what's coming.
So, wait and see what's coming. It's pretty ominous. We don't know what's coming. Please tell us, Mr. Homan. But wait and see what's coming. It sounds like there is something very big going to be announced. It's in the pipeline right now. Again, we don't know. Some people are saying this sounds like the Trump's first administration. There was this saying, 2 more weeks, something big is going to happen. It never really happened. Some people are saying it's similar to that. Others are saying actually the Trump administration is moving at kind of breakneck speed right now, and they've already arrested some officials. They're creating a list of them. They're checking that list twice. They're making a list, checking it twice, and we'll see what that means as we go forward. Again, a lot of threats right now. They've been making threats for a long time. Tom Homan himself has repeatedly been saying and suggesting that public officials, elected officials, government officials, some of them have said, they are willing to go to jail to protect illegal immigrants. Tom Homan has said directly he's willing to put them in jail. So we will see. Again, he's not being clear on the context of his statement, but in light of what is happening right now, many are interpreting it like that. We will probably know soon. That said, folks, leave a question, hit the like button, it helps us on a lot of the algorithm. Let's jump into some questions. All right, let's see here. First off, Alfred's mom. You're saying, unbelievable, their own countries don't take them. They have the obligation to take them back. Yeah, and a lot of countries were saying they wouldn't take them back. The Chinese Communist Party, they were saying they would not take back illegal immigrant Chinese, especially at the tail end of the Biden administration, like post-election, late election. A lot of the illegal immigrants were Chinese. You had a lot of Chinese coming in. They were saying they wouldn't take them back. Venezuela was saying they wouldn't take them back. Honduras was saying they weren't going to take them back. A lot of countries have since folded. The Trump administration has been using trade pressure on that front. One second. The Trump administration has been using trade pressure on that front, saying, look, you're not going to take them back? Well, you know what? Maybe we don't feel like taking your goods without tariffing you anymore. maybe we don't feel like giving you any kind of like foreign funding anymore because, you know, the United States actually gives out a lot of money, by the way. We give a lot of money for like assistance to these countries, and they don't give us much back, frankly. And so, you know, we do hold the cards on that front. Trump was using that as a negotiating platform. Venezuela folded, Honduras folded, a lot of other countries folded. They're now taking back their citizens. On that front, it's not clear why Trump is looking for more third countries like Rwanda, for example. It's, again, so with the Rwanda story of Trump possibly sending illegal immigrants to Rwanda, there are a few different ways you could interpret that. One of them is that this is for people, you know, again, who their countries won't take them back. In the Middle East, that's going to be an issue. As was noted, an illegal immigrant, Iraqi, has already been sent back and sent to Rwanda, not to Iraq. And so for some countries that are not deemed safe, they might consider that as an option. Okay, you know what? We can't send you back to your own country. Maybe your life would be in danger. You do have some people who are here in like kind of gray area amnesty programs. That is the case with some countries. We can send you to the next best thing. Third option country, safe country. If you understand the way that amnesty works, right? If you are persecuted in your country, you want to apply for amnesty in the United States. How does that work? Now, you had that a lot with, for example, people coming from Venezuela to the United States. A lot of them were given amnesty. You had that a lot with people from Haiti coming to the United States because of the gang wars there and, you know, the coup d'etat launched by good old General Barbecue, who got his name because apparently he likes barbecuing humans. You had that, for example, in Syria with, you know, people migrating to Europe. Mostly the countries have very good welfare systems and bypassing a lot of countries in between that don't have good welfare systems. The argument was this. Normally, if you want to seek amnesty, you have to apply for amnesty in the first safe country. And so what did that mean for, let's say, Western Europe first, where you had people from Syria going there? Well, they go through Poland, they go through a lot of other safe countries, and they want to go to Sweden because Sweden has pretty fantastic social welfare programs. You can go to Sweden, never work another day in your life, start a gang there, raise a family, launch some hand grenade attacks on your neighbors, and live comfortably ever after. You can do the same thing in the UK. You can travel all through Europe, safe country, take that little ferry across the strait, go to the UK, you know, live it up. You can never work another day in your life, and a lot of them are choosing to do that. And so, you know, for that point, the argument is they're violating some of the laws in international amnesty when they go to multiple safe countries and don't apply for amnesty in the first safe country as international law would require. It's the same thing in the United States. You know, Mexico, despite the the cartels and so on, is designated a safe country, and so, you know, that would in some ways invalidate effectively every single illegal entry into the United States that goes through Mexico, which is a lot of them. That is also the basis of Donald Trump's requirement for what they call remain in Mexico, right? They have a policy where if you do want to apply for amnesty in the United States, we don't have it so you can come into the country and wait in line here, and maybe in, I don't know, 7 or 10 years, you're going to have your hearing. It might never happen. You might choose to not just show up because there's nothing forcing you to. The enforcement systems are almost impossible. And you know what the effect of that is, it's effectively just a program to indefinitely illegally enter the United States. And a lot of people are gaming the system. There were a lot of reports, confirmed reports, not even rumors, that a lot of the non-governmental organizations, the NGOs that were facilitating this, because again, there was a whole system set up for it, the NGOs in Europe and in the United States were coaching these illegal immigrants on how to apply for amnesty, what to say, just to get in line. And so they were being told the key words. Legally, it's a process. Legally, it's like a computer code. You got to say the key words. I'm afraid for my life. I'm not safe in my country. I fear for my safety. Let me in. And you know, you said the magic words, open sesame, welcome to America. And that's how it was working effectively. Trump had remained in Mexico because they are deemed a safe country. And as are a lot of other countries in Latin America. So as they cross upward, they technically should have been applying in many countries before reaching the U.S. It's also one of the arguments, by the way, with why a lot of them were discarding their identities. I showed you all this when I was in Mexico. You know, I went there, of course, researching this, and I showed you that on the other side of the Rio Grande, on the Mexico side, it's the ground is literally covered with discarded IDs. I'm not exaggerating when I say covered. This is not an exaggeration. It is literally covered with passports, driver's licenses, state IDs, you know, country IDs, everything. Discarded airplane tickets, because why do they do that? They have burn pits, and you know, on the periphery of there's just piles of them. It's crazy. When you witness it, it is crazy. Why do they do that? Well, if you collect them, and I know researchers who've collected a lot of them because they analyze them. If you collect them, you start seeing, oh, this individual had traveled, was living in Chile for many years. They were originally from Haiti. They had been living in Chile for several years. Then they wanted to come to the United States. Why is that problematic? Why would a Haitian need to discard their identity? Well, here's the reason. While Haitians were being offered temporary protection status under the Biden administration, which has now been repealed, by the way, if you were in a safe country and lived there long enough to have like a passport or whatever else, you would not be eligible to come to the United States under the temporary protection status program, because that would have been deemed a safe country. Because of that, you would not have been eligible to enter the United States under the programs that were opened up. And so what happened was they created programs allowing for that type of, pseudo gray area status for illegal immigrants. Because they did that, and you had NGOs coaching them on how to do it, you had massive amounts of people defrauding the United States. They were committing what I would call identity fraud. They were defrauding the United States by lying about their status, lying about where they came from, lying about where they were living, lying about all of that. And of course, they had to lie, or they would have not been eligible for those very expanded gray area programs. That's where it's at. And so back to these third countries, there's that, and then last one I won't go too deep into. There's also the possibility Trump wants to expand the type of agreement we have with El Salvador, where they actually house criminals, gang members, whatever else. And if you understand that El Salvador might be a great destination for, Latin Americans who are part of gangs, we also have terrorists. And there's a lot on the terror watch list. There are people like that. There are people from Africa. There are people from the Middle East who are criminals as well. And you might not want to send them to, Central America. You might want to send them somewhere else. And so it's possible Rwanda or other countries could work as the third option for those types of prisoners as well. So we're not having to house them in prisons in the United States where they're offered due process, right? And they can challenge their arrest or cases and appeal them indefinitely for 20 years, which happens, by the way. It is to an extent a way to get her on habeas corpus, frankly, right? And so that's also part of the argument with it. Now the question, Paul Moore, you're saying, forget the cost. The marketing value alone is worth millions. Don't you get it? You're talking about Alcatraz, by the way. You're saying it's symbolic of a serious position towards crime. Yeah, which is also what Trump is saying, right? He's saying it's a symbol. Now, if you are a criminal and you are a person who has decided that you want to make a living or you want to better your life by harming other people, what is the motivation for that, right? If you're a criminal and you say, you know what? I feel like robbing someone today. As a criminal, what do you do when you commit a robbery? Well, you do two things. First, you take steps so you don't get caught. You do it at nighttime. You do it in an area where police are probably not around. You don't do it right in front of a police officer unless you're in Seattle. Right? I'm joking. I'm joking because Seattle's known to have kind of looser requirements with that. Or San Francisco, right? You probably don't do it in front of a police officer because you don't want to get caught, right? Jokes aside. And why do you do that? Well, it's because you don't want to get arrested, obviously. You don't want to get arrested. Why do you not want to get arrested? Well, it's because the carrying out of the crime is for your personal benefit. And if there's no personal benefit in carrying out the crime and it has the opposite effect, you're probably not going to do it. The other motivation is you want to make sure your victim is not going to fight back and beat you. So you're probably going to, try to rob somebody who is less capable of fighting than you are. You will probably target a person who does not own a firearm. If you see a guy looking like Neo from The Matrix and he's got like 5 guns strapped to him for some unknown reason, you're probably not going to try robbing him. You're going to go for somebody else. If you're driving down the street and you see a house with like, the Don't Tread on Me flag, and there's a guy in like a rocking chair with a shotgun out front, and he's like, playing a banjo or something like that, you might not want to rob that house. But if you go to his neighbor's house and they have one of those signs like, this is a household that opposes guns, that supports mass migration, and everything else, it's like putting out a sign saying, we do not have the means to defend ourselves, and you might say, that's the one, buddy. What's the motivation for that, right? It's because you want to get away with it. A criminal, when committing a crime, wants to get away with committing a crime, obviously, because the entire motivation for committing a crime is to make your life better. You want more money, right? Unless you're a psychopath and you just get a thrill out of the committing of the crime in general. You do have people like that too, which is why we used to have insane asylums, by the way. But if the message being sent is that the consequence outweighs the benefit, you are probably not going to do it. And so, for a lot of people, myself, probably a lot of you watching this show, the motivation to not commit a crime is, internal morality. Your value system would prevent you from doing it. You don't want to hurt other people. For a criminal, they've already overstepped that. They've already had the willingness to harm others for the betterment of themselves. And so the only restriction for them is external. It is not an internal barrier. They've already lost the internal barrier that would forbid them from doing it. All that remains is the external barrier, and that is the threat of consequence. And so that's also why sometimes you have very extreme laws. That is why in the past, some countries had really severe consequences for committing a crime. It is to create an outside incentive to not try it. It is not worth the consequence. Don't even try it. You don't want to go to jail for life. You don't want to have your head chopped off. You don't want to do it, buddy. And Alcatraz, as Paul Moore is noting, does send a type of symbolic message with that. It also does have kind of a message for the people of a country, actually, that we are a nation of laws. This is what we do to criminals. And there is a kind of a message sent on that front where people do understand that, you know what, law enforcement is here, law enforcement protects us, and you can live a bit more calmly. It does create a kind of peace of mind, right? Denise B., you're saying, Josh, I understand the rationale of providing the air flight tickets to help illegal aliens leave, but doesn't paying them in addition to that, send the wrong message, i.e., paying them for crime and encouraging them to hold out for yet a better deal? Yeah, I think that could be argued as well. I mean, the other argument is, it is that you're still like paying people who, in my opinion, the American people should not owe them anything, frankly, right? Why should taxpayers have to pay these people money? It's an insult, I think, personally. I think not only do Americans not owe any of these individuals anything, the people who have come here under the kindness of Americans and the openness of Americans, in my opinion, they've been taking advantage of that. Now, I understand to an extent why many of them came. My personal experience, when I went to Panama and I went to some of the camps there, and I actually talked to people myself, a lot of the people I talked to came across as very genuine. Many of them came off as very kind-hearted people. For example, some of the Hondurans I talked to, a lot of the people I talked to were from Honduras at the time. They were fleeing gang violence. They were saying, hey, my country has been destroyed by gangs. They have 5 gangs that are absolutely terrorizing their countries. I can understand why a person like that would not want themselves there and would take significant effort to get their family out. On that front, they have a new government in Honduras. That government is taking very strong actions now against the gangs. And so to an extent, that is now being resolved. To an extent. I understand people from Venezuela who see what has happened to their country, where they went from being one of the top rising economies in the world, a very nice country, to being a place where people are breaking into zoos and eating zoo animals because they're starving to death, where they're eating rotten food because there's no food. Because why? They decided to try real socialism. They said, you know what? It's never been done right. We're going to try it. We're going to do socialism right this time. And they didn't do it right yet again, as every single socialist has ever attempted to do and then realized. Maybe they'll get it right next time. They just got to keep on trying, even if it fails every single time they try it. But Venezuela tried socialism. They didn't do it right. Again, I'd argue they did do it right. Just socialism doesn't work, but they tried and they found out. And it destroyed their country. And of course, you have a lot of people now trying to escape the socialist hellhole they created for themselves. It's become a very bad country. Gangs are running amok. It's very hard for you to live a decent life, and a lot of them are coming here. That is, in fact, the case. I understand why a person would want to do that. I completely understand. But for Americans, the other problem is that they've brought a lot of the problems in those countries to our country. The way these individuals, many of them will still vote, is in line with the policies they fled. Because, again, they don't even have independent media in those countries. And a lot of them are going to vote probably for personal interest, which means they're going to vote probably for the policies they fled in the first place. That is another concern with it. In other words, if they're allowed to stay, it will effectively make America like the country they left, to an extent. Gangs, massive social welfare programs, and we're already seeing it. And so for the sake of America, a lot of people here are saying, look, look, we want to be nice to everybody, but we can't do it. We don't have the capabilities for it, we don't have the resources for it, and frankly, it's not fair to us. It's not fair for us to pay for you with our tax dollars. We're working and we're paying for you. How is that fair for Americans? It's destroying our schools. You are massively impacting the basic well-being of the people in this country. Houses are unaffordable now because of massive demand for a limited supply. You could blame that partly on just red tape in place for building new homes. It is very badly damaging the basic quality of life for the American people. And I know not everybody is joining a gang and robbing people in Times Square, but enough people are doing it that it's ruining it for everybody. The massive disregard for American law. And because of that, Americans are now fed up. They're saying, you know what, I'm sure there's plenty of good people, but the number of bad people who got in is also very large, and it's ruining our country. And for a lot of Americans, that's what they're saying. And so, you know, we like to be nice, but, you know, you can only go so far with it, frankly. It has reached a point where it's taking advantage of them. It's taking advantage of the people here. And that's the message being sent by the Trump administration also. They're saying, you guys took advantage of us. And so, you know, on that front, the idea that we'd, in addition to everything else, buy them an airplane ticket and give them $1,000, it's not like a government agency is, you know, that like the people in a government agency are developing wealth. That money comes from taxpayers. That money comes, again, from the pockets of, in my opinion, very kind-hearted Americans who don't have to be giving this money in the first place, but they are. You know, some countries, if you illegally enter, they treat you very badly. They treat you very badly. Some countries, if you illegally enter, they're going to drop you off on an island in the middle of nowhere with nothing on it and say, "See you later, muchacho." If you go to some countries, they'll kill you, frankly. Historically, that was the policy. Do you know what would happen? And I'm talking like late 1800s, early 1900s. This is not ancient history. It is kind of far back, but it's not ancient history. If you illegally entered, for example, some of the Indian territory, do you know what they would do to you? They would hold you down, they would nail wooden pegs into your body, and they would light them on fire, and they would kill you. They would kill you in one of the most painful ways you could imagine. That was the punishment for illegal entry into Indian territory. If you illegally entered China, they would kill you. If you illegally entered Japan, they would shoot you or maybe behead you. Many countries, until the early-ish 1900s, were very harsh with this. It was not a kind thing. We're living in a new age. We're living in an age where people respect more human rights. And America has always had a pretty open-door policy with illegal immigration. It's always been this way. But there are limits to it. And you could argue that one of the most open countries in the world, and America still is, even outside of the whole issue of illegal immigration, still is, on the legal immigration front, the most open country on the face of the planet. The most kind-hearted in terms of the policies, the things we give you, the most open in terms of even what is required to immigrate. Most countries have merit-based immigration. You need to show the ability that you're going to benefit the country and not, go on, maybe not have 20 kids and go on welfare. We don't really do that. We let in people who do take advantage of the country, absolutely. And we've let that happen, even through legal means. Most countries don't do that. And so on that front, the idea that Americans would even pay them, it is actually very generous. Now, the other argument is, there's no possible way. There are some possible ways, but it would require something very extreme. There's no normal route to deport 20 million people. And the Trump administration is saying they effectively want to deport 20 to 21 million people. There's no way to do it. The only way you could do it is probably through martial law. You would need to declare martial law, suspend habeas corpus, have all the cases go through military court, and you'd have to have the military do it. Aside from that, what that would mean for like basic quality of life, which we would be living under martial law were that to happen, you would have soldiers literally kicking in doors because if people refuse to open the door, they have to kick the door down, kicking in doors, dragging people out of their houses. Like that would be the only option they would have to actually deal with it normally. The path they've taken is a middle road, making severe criminal consequences for people who do not register to self-deport, creating financial incentives for people who do, and then going after the worst individuals, the criminals, the gang members, the terrorists. We'll see how far they go with it. But on that front, I would say it is a very kind-hearted thing to actually even pay people money to leave. But you could say that $1,000 is cheaper than $17,000, and I think for the Trump administration, that's the logic behind it. Ashley from California, you're saying the CCP is a desperate, dying animal that's going into survival mode. That is true. I wanted to cover it today. I bumped some stuff because of what happened with India. India and Pakistan may be going to war now. Okay, so things are escalating in China right now. I had one of you, ask me, would the CCP, roll things back? Would they become nicer? Hey, the United States is putting tariffs on us. Hey, Chinese people, let's go, shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, and let's start buying more products to revitalize our economy. What a great idea. I explained yesterday there's some cultural elements that would forbid that. And especially when people feel that there's no safety net. They're going to hoard. They're going to sit on it. But the other side is the CCP is not going to do that. It is outside the nature of the Chinese Communist Party, and it's outside everything we've ever seen them do. The more likely path the CCP is going to take is to become more authoritarian, which is what we've seen them do over and over again, and is also what we're now seeing them do yet again. The latest update on this, you now have worker strikes in China. People are actually protesting. And this is people saying, I'm not making enough money to survive. I lost my business. I ran a factory. We were selling through Temu and Shein. The other side of that whole picture with Temu and Shein is the profit margins for some of the businesses was so low, they were already barely getting by, let alone additional costs. And so people's livelihoods are being destroyed. For a lot of people in China, one of the only reasons some of them still support the CCP is because of financial benefit. It doesn't benefit them in many other ways. And so it's a lot of older people who get their, they get their pensions. A lot of them still support it because of their pensions. Even then, it's a bit iffy. And a lot of middle-aged people support it if they have been able to enrich themselves financially. If you remove the financial element, some of the last bastions of support for the CCP will fall. And you now see that happening. The other message from the CCP was to invoke Mao Zedong. And what did Mao Zedong say? The video they posted? Basically saying that the Chinese people are willing to eat bitterness, that they're willing to suffer. So the message from the CCP is that it will allow the Chinese people to suffer indefinitely, to die, to starve to death before it makes a deal. And the invocation of the video from Mao Zedong that they were using was actually prior to one of the campaigns where the CCP starved, it was millions of people. I want to say tens of millions, but we don't even fully know how many people they killed. I would say well into the areas of tens of millions of people. The CCP starved them to death And so, the deeper context of the Chinese Communist Party right now as we speak, invoking that message from Mao Zedong as their response to the United States is, look, we will hold out even if we have to kill, any untold numbers of Chinese people. That's the message they're sending. And so they're not gonna get better. They've never shown any signs of it. To get better would basically be to change the system, and frankly, if they change the system, wonderful. If they got rid of the CCP, that would be the best thing to ever happen to the world. China would go from being, an enemy of the free world to probably like the flag bearer of probably, prosperity. They would probably do fantastic. A China without the Chinese Communist Party would be a blessing to the earth. It'd be a fantastic thing. And so maybe that's what's happening. If it is, I'd say fantastic. But anyways, the CCP right now is doubling down. The CCP right now is becoming more vicious, and they're going to start lashing out at the Chinese people, even more so because of the mass protests that are now starting. I'll have to go more into this in a future episode because there's a lot to touch on. Now the question, James George, you're saying, Josh, I have one question. Even if they disposed of their IDs, you're talking about, I said, on the Mexico side of the Rio Grande, as I showed you all before, there's a ton of IDs and driver's licenses and passports discarded by illegal immigrants. You're saying, Josh, I have one question. Even if they dispose their IDs and passports, there would be biometric evidence and digital traits. Surely they can be tracked, traced, and deported. Intelligence agencies do. So that is a great question. And that also ties into one of the more sensitive topics. I'll just leave it at that. I'll explain a little bit. This is going to be one of the big questions. So, this is the process that had been established under the previous administration to facilitate gray area migration. Not totally illegal, but it did not follow due process. They changed the process. So how did it work? They were part of international programs that were facilitating, funding, and running the operations of mass illegal immigration to the United States. Part of that program was through the United Nations. I exposed this in my previous documentary, which was, of course, the Global Compact for Migration. There were other things like that. Your tax dollars were funding some of that, including paying people to illegally enter the United States. They were being given stipends and such. The money basically was going to the United Nations. They were then in turn funding non-governmental organizations. The non-governmental organizations and the United Nations was running operations at all the camps. I personally went there. I saw it with my own eyes. I video recorded it. It's in my documentary. You can see it for yourself if you want proof of it. I personally saw it. I personally went there. They have all these services set up. You register with it. You become part of the process of illegal immigration to the United States. They have different processes to facilitate that. They get to the U.S.-Mexico border. You have a couple options. You either just cross over illegally and then declare yourself, saying, I want to apply for amnesty. Then you become part of the system. They also had a process whereby you could schedule it, the CBP One app, now the CBP Home app. You surrender yourself. Sometimes they would even fly you on direct flights into the United States as part of the CBP One app program. So you had two different elements with this. Illegal immigrants could surrender, declare, hey, I want amnesty. People through the CBP One app could apply as well through that. And there were a lot of other things. That was all taxpayer funded. Now, after you were taken in from that, and I have footage of this entire process. Again, I witnessed this. I'm not saying this based on rumor. This is not hearsay. I saw it with my own eyes. I video recorded it. I talked to people in it. I showed it to all of you. It's in my documentary if you want to watch it. After they pick them up, they take them to what they call processing facilities. Those were run by Border Patrol and by the Department of Homeland Security. They process them at the processing facilities. They can only hold them for like 72 hours. It's usually quicker than that. At that stage, they go through the legal process of entering the system for like amnesty or temporary protection status or whatever else it is. During that process, as James George notes, they do actually check the biometrics. And so that's where some things are going to get interesting, because if they check the biometrics, they might know, oh, this person is not from Haiti, they're from Chile. Oh, they've been living in Chile for several years. They lied. They're lying to us. And the question is, were they deporting those people? There's no strong evidence saying they were. Or were they overlooking that and then still allowing them in? That process could be grounds for maybe further government action. I don't know if the Trump administration is going to do anything about it. Maybe. At the very least, you could say it was a violation of due process. They were violating due process through those actions. After they were taken out of the processing facilities, they put them on these big white buses and they bussed them to different drop-off points, and they just let them all go into the heartland of the United States. I personally went to a couple of those sites. I video recorded it. I showed it to all of you. This is, again, not hearsay. It is not rumor. I personally went there. I personally talked to these people. I witnessed it myself and I reported on it. I went on the ground to cover all of this. And from there, of course, they also got free airplane tickets, free bus tickets, and they were able to go anywhere in the country they wanted. And they also had DHS papers showing that their bags had been inspected, they had already been searched, the whole 9 yards. There was a process for it. Now, the other side is there was a lot of cloak and dagger, as we were told. Even local government officials. I interviewed the mayor of El Cajon in San Diego, who, this was happening in his neighborhood. This was happening in the neighborhood of an elected mayor, where they were bringing these buses in, dropping them off, and there were non-governmental organizations picking them up. There were illegal taxis picking them up. There were some really shady groups there, which I personally believed might have been people trying to enslave them or human traffic them. There were really shady Chinese groups there. Even the mayor of El Cajon was saying he was trying to get answers on what was happening, and they were refusing to tell him. The mayor was not being told. And so, and he brought that up. His exact words were, "Why the cloak and dagger? Why are you not telling us? Like, why is there not transparency?" And that raised a lot of questions. Now, I would add to this one last point, which is this. Okay, so a lot of the legal avenues for this entire gray area program were based on individual country crisis. So, for example, people from Haiti were offered temporary protection status because you had gang wars there. You had gangs that were taking over the countries and they were killing people. It was horrible there. You had people offered temporary protection status from Venezuela. You had people from Ukraine offered temporary protection status. So you did have that offered to many other countries. But this is where it gets complicated. The United Nations program, the one the United States was signed on to as a partner, and the one which was facilitating the NGOs, funding them, working with them, funding these mass movements. This is actually not just for the United States. The same program is in Europe, which is also one of the programs facilitating mass migration into Europe, Western Europe mostly, and Canada, by the way. Right? Canada, same thing. The narrative of that is climate change. And so this is kind of the bigger piece that I would like some answers on. The legal basis of that international agreement, the legal basis they were using saying this was facilitating amnesty, was they were saying that a global climate crisis was justifying the mass movement of people from third world countries, Africa, basically all of Africa, all of Latin America, parts of the Middle East, to countries that were, first world countries, pretty much just the United States, Western Europe, and Canada. And they called this climate migration, climate amnesty. And because they had declared there was a global climate crisis, you could legally have people seeking amnesty from the global climate crisis. That is the other big narrative that was created, and I personally believe that was the legal avenue used to facilitate that. And so when you had people being processed through these facilities, on one side you did have it where, okay, you're not from Haiti, you're from Chile, you lied about your country of origin. It would still fall under the boundaries of again, the climate crisis that was being used as the legal backing for those programs. I don't know for sure whether that was used within the processing facilities, but I can say for sure that was the basis of the United Nations programs that were facilitating it, because they don't hide it. This isn't like some secret. It's on their website, and they have public statements on it. And so I would personally like to get more answers on that. With all this stuff, we just weren't given a lot of answers, and so we'll see what comes out from it. All right, folks, that said, it is Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. Hope you're all enjoying a good day ahead of you. Join me tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Another great episode planned out, so join me then. That said, as always, also, folks, do not forget to hit the like button. It helps us a lot with the algorithms. Also, please share this episode. That said, I will see you again tomorrow. Please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.